Welcome everyone to Coaching in Session. My name is Michael Rearden, and I'll be your mindset coach today. And today we're going to be talking about education and the mindset. And when we think about education, we probably are thinking about last year and the whole debacle about what was going on in the school system. How many parents are taking their kids out of school and now homeschooling? Now, there's going to be pros and cons between homeschooling and public school or private school. I have talked to other people about it, about the difference between homeschooling, public schooling, goods and bads on the podcast before, but we're going to be diving into the education and the mindset of it. Because if we look at the mindset of what education is, it's really going to determine who we become as an adult. And if you know anything about our current society, our society is more on the frail side, very dainty, where if I say something that might offend someone, if I don't use someone's pronoun, or if I have opposing beliefs as other people, they might feel a certain type of way. When has this falling out occurred? And I have people who are going to be coming on talking about that type of fallout. But today we're just going to be dealing with the education aspect of it. Because if we can understand the education aspect of what mindset is, then we're going to be in better shape for us to make good choices for our future. So we're going to be diving into the blog that came out yesterday on education and mindset. So let's get into that blog right now. So when we look at education and mindset, we are going to be looking not just at what education does to our mind. Because if we think about kindergarten all the way to 8th grade and then from high school all the way to college, our mind is going to be different. So when we're younger, we're going to be thinking more in line with, okay, we're learning, we're having fun. Learning can be fun, it can be difficult. But then as we grow up, now we have our own personality. We have our own subconscious mind kind of going in our head. That's where bullying is more rampant. That's where people are in cliques and peer groups. And people have a choice. They can either conform to society or they can kind of be outcasts. Many people choose to conform. And the problem with that is later down the line, they're going to have to unconform in order to get out of that rat race type of thing. Because the system that you're being put into, or your kids are being put into, or our young minds are being put into, is setting them up for this system. And it's just clockwork. Eventually, they're just going to fall into it with them not even knowing it, because there is a different way. So when we look at education mindset, it's going to be talking about why many people are talking about, well, let's homeschool our kids instead of bringing them to public schools. Now, I will say that some public schools, especially in the inner city, are going to be very toxic. I worked in both an inner city and a smaller suburban type of town. And I can tell you that the inner city was very chaotic, very rough. And the middle school, high school type of suburban type of town, that was a little bit more manageable, but you can still see all of the problems. And you can just magnify it when you went into an inner city where the teachers are just overworked, underpaid. And then there's a lot of problems that stem from the family that they go into school. Now the kids are not learning because they have problems at home. So there's a bunch to it, more than just, all right, what type of mindset does this kid have? So we're going to dive into that in a little bit. But just going down the blog, trying to get some talking points, we're going to be also looking at how the educational system has gone from teaching the curriculum to being a more opinionated type of teaching. And there has been many things that have been happening over the months. One, there's been like transgender shows in the schools. So men dressed as women would come to the schools and put on a show, a dance or whatever. There's video of a kid passing out money to these drag queens and things like that. So it's kind of like they're at a strip club, but they're in 3rd grade. So it's kind of like, okay, that's kind of weird. Learning, education, and mindset, incorporating that into the school system. Yet the schools don't have money for proper mentorship or getting up-to-date books, but they have money to invite drag queens, or they have time to invest, even if it's a free program, to take away from the schooling, but to allow these drag queens to come, which is crazy. So we have room in the school system, apparently, but we're using it in a different way. So the mindset that comes from that is going to be exactly what the government is going to be basically spouting. Because if we look at our local government, they're going to be basically running the schools, right? So the superintendent, things like that, they're going to make up all the laws. The curriculum is going to be thought out before the year even begins, and they're going to kind of agree on that, and they're going to say, yeah, this is a good idea, and then kind of go down that road. But doesn't necessarily mean the curriculum is going to help them be successful. But there is a way that we can actually help these young minds that are in the public schools, because even if we look at homeschools, they still have to go through this type of mindset shift, because you're learning education. You're learning the ins and outs of math, reading, writing, history, science, but you're not necessarily learning about yourself. Now, you might learn passively about yourself, but there's not enough learning about yourself. And many people are going through the school system and they're stressed, they're overburdened, they're so worried about making a mistake where they're not happy because they're walking on eggshells. So there's just so much education and mindset, and I'm going to do my best today to unpack all of it, because there's so many talking points to that regard of education and mindset. So let's dive into the first step, which is going to be the type of schooling. So the first thing we have to look at is when many people are going to be talking about, well, I want to homeschool my kids because there's so much problems going on in school, whether my kid is going to be learning about being a boy if they're a girl, or being a girl if they're a boy, or they're going to be learning about being a drag queen, or they're going to be learning about a religion if you're not religious. So many people are upset about that one. They're going to be talking about the abortion things. They're going to be worrying about mass shootings, all this stuff. So students have a full plate. And if we don't think they have a full plate, think again. And I want to make this clear. Everyone has stress. Even babies have stress. Infants, right? They have stress. It's just different than adult stress. Now, we might stress about our mortgage. We might stress about a car note, our relationships. We have a different type of stress. If you ask a first grader what type of stress they have, they're going to be worried about their homework, maybe their dog, maybe their friends didn't like their drawing, things like that, right? Now, we just can't compare our stress to their stress because they're in a different stage of development. So knowing those different stages of development are going to help us understand one thing, that their mindset is going to be different. What a person needs is going to be determined by their environment, by their behavior, and then by their age. So all those things, all those factors need to be first understood, and then we can start to make appropriate actions. So today, I really can't dive into, well, when you're 7 years old, you need to do this. Otherwise, this is going to be a 3-part series, and it's going to be hour-long episodes for each of them, because there's so much to mindset. But let me see if I can give you a blanket statement of what mindset is. And it's going to be the quality of our thoughts at any given point. So if we're homeschooling, maybe some thoughts that we might be having are, I'm not around my friends. I don't like learning these subjects. I don't want to take a test. Same thing as if you're in a school. Now, you might say, oh, my friends don't like me. I'm not accepted. I'm not learning in class. Everyone's so disruptive. Everyone's so disrespectful. And I'm watching it. So we take away some of the negativities when we take them from the school system and putting it into the home, but they still have a set of problems. And whatever those problems be, they have to address them. So it just depends on the person, right? Homeschooling can be effective, but later on in life, if they don't get that developmental type of structure, they're going to rebel because they need it, or they're not going to know how to act. And I'll give you a great story about homeschooling where there was a 15-year-old in college. He basically was able to skip most of high school because he was homeschooled. Super smart, super intelligent, but he was 15, 16 years old in college. So as a freshman in college, I was a freshman also. He was coming in, but he didn't know how to act. He was just kind of thinking how he acted at home, things like that. So he learned how to act from his peers, the students in the college. And though his friends were good people, he was still very childish, right? He was very playful. But when it came to him excelling, his goal was to be a doctor. He didn't become a doctor, long story short, because somewhere down the line, he wanted to go the different road. So he joins the military, and it's kind of like he wants to be a doctor. Now he's joining the military. Not saying that the military is a bad profession or a poor choice. It's just how he was setting himself up, or his parents were setting himself up to be a doctor, to be someone that's far ahead. He could have been a doctor at 23 years old, but he didn't go down that road because parents can't decide what their kids are going to do. Now, of course, they can guide them, they can lead them, but that's not going to necessarily mean that the kid is going to do exactly what the parent wants. So when it comes to education, we can educate our children the way we want, the way we see fit, but it doesn't mean that they're going to have the mindset that we necessarily want, because a parent can't do that. A parent is a parent. Mom is mom, dad is dad, grandma is grandma, grandpa is grandpa. We can't change that for them. Now, of course, there's going to be some outliers where maybe dad can be coach, where mom can be an instructor, but it's a different dynamic. Because even when I was swimming, I would get these students coming in and the parents knew how to swim and all this stuff, or the parents knew how to teach music or whatever it be, but their kids didn't listen to them. Why, right? Why are the kids not listening? Are the kids just incapable of listening? No, of course not. It's just that they understand that there's boundaries between the relationships. So when we're dealing with homeschool and we're dealing with public school, there's going to be a disparity in relationships. Now, if you think about homeschooling, you're going to have a drastic number or drastic decrease in relationships. That's just a given. Now, when you're in public school, there's a lot more people to deal with. You might meet people you don't like. You got to deal with them. Versus homeschool, if you don't like someone, you don't have to hang out with them no more. And then we deal with the adversity part. Being in public school is tough. It is tough to be in public school. As a teacher, just, being there and listening to all the students talk and how they treat each other is kind of like, whoa, it is tough, but there is a way around it. And that is to homeschool, where we can protect our kid, but at the same time, what are we protecting them from and what are we failing to show them? Because if we protect them and not show them the hardships and the difficulties, how will they grow, right? As many of you know, probably, failure is a good thing, right? So when someone gets bullied, when someone has to go through a struggle or deal with peer pressure or to deal with some type of hiccup in a relationship at school, or if you like someone and then they, end up being, not the person you thought, or they don't want to go out with you. It's going to hurt for, to some degree, but then you have to get out of that. We learn so much from the schools that many people take it for granted. And all the people who are taking their kids out may be doing a disservice. Not saying that they're going to do a bad job teaching their kids how to be proper members of society. It's just that depending on where they are, their developmental needs are either going to be met or not met. I know I was talking to someone on the podcast at some point about their kid wanting to go to public school after them being homeschooled or even in private school for some time. So the kid is in private school or is being homeschooled and they automatically say, hey, mom, dad, I want to go to public school. I know people in real life here where I live who have a very affluent type of upbringing. They went to this private prestigious school, yet the school's no good. Why does a higher end school not be good? You would think since you pay for it, it must be better. Well, imagine if I charge $6,000 a month for coaching. Okay, so I'm charging $6,000 a month for coaching. Let's say Michael B, my alternate self, is going to be offering $200 a month for coaching. If we look at how money is really structured, the more expensive, typically the better quality. So if I am able to afford $6,000, guess what happens? I'm going to say, you know what? This is actually a better deal for me because now I'm able to spend $6,000 and I get higher quality coaching. But theoretically, the coaching that you get from me or Michael B will be the same. It's just the monetary amount is different. So we look at the monetary amount as skin in the game, not about quality. So when it comes to education, the quality of the education is dependent on the teachers and the parents. Now, the problem is with education is that the teachers have opinions rather than just teaching curriculum. Now, I'm all for teachers having a say, being able to express themselves, being open about who they are. But at the same time, that's their belief. They can't force someone to agree with their belief. So if you don't like the president, that doesn't belong in the classroom. If you don't like a certain type of law, that doesn't belong in the classroom. Now, if you wanted to talk about pros and cons of laws or pros and cons of different presidents, that's history. That's education. But now it's kind of like, oh, this president is no good. This person is no good. This law is no good. All of these things are happening. And the kids are seeing it. So what's happening is we think we're helping them, right? We're going to make them just like ourselves. But the problem is many of those people are already broken. So they're trying to make these kids better, but they're just turning them into broken kids. So education, in a sense, is broken because the mindset that people are coming out with are going to be limiting beliefs of frugality and of inferiority, because many people are struggling right now financially and they're trying to figure out what is next in their life. There's a lot of uncertainty, and that uncertainty brings more stress, more trouble. What can we do? We have to understand that the mindset that we give our kids is dependent on us. So it doesn't matter if you homeschool, it doesn't matter if you go to private school or Montessori school or public school. You can train your kids the way you want. And I read a tweet, or I think it was a video, on how school or education basically programs your kid, which is true. I remember one time, it was an evening time, and I was doing security work at a nursing home that I worked at doing dietary aid when I was like 20 or something. I was in college. There was a guy who came in and his mom was upstairs recouping. And so he had a daughter, and the daughter was like 3 years old. And so the daughter came and she kind of drew a big circle. And then she says, "Oh, this is a tree." I go, "Oh, okay." It looked like a chocolate chip cookie, number one. But number two, I was like, "Oh, okay, that's interesting." So what I did was I drew a tree for her and I said, "This is a tree." And then she looked. She was like, "Oh, okay." And then guess what she did? She drew a tree. Now, it wasn't as good as my tree, not being braggadocious over here that I'm being a 3-year-old in a tree drawing contest. She was able to see, oh, this is a tree. And then she mimicked the tree, right? I programmed her technically. She thought a tree was a circle with a bunch of dots on it. I said, this is a tree. It has a trunk. It has some branches, some leaves, and that's our tree. And then she conformed to that. What if I told her her tree was the right tree, and then she went believing her tree was the right tree? Eventually, she'll be ridiculed one day saying, "No, what are you talking about? That's not a tree. That's a chocolate chip cookie." Now she's been told a lie all her life, but no one wanted to speak up. No one wanted to tell her otherwise. That's kind of like where we are in society. Many people don't want to speak up. Many people just accept what they get, accept what they have. And when we look at education and mindset, it is exactly that. Many people are going to fall into a mindset because of their education, but they won't open up. They won't look for the truth. They only know what they have been told, and what they have been told is their truth. Mindset is a very peculiar thing because you can either be told the truth and follow it or be told a lie and follow it. We really have to dig deep when it comes to education. What is happening? What has happened in the past, and what's happening in the future, and what's going to be the outcome if we keep going down this road? It's that cause and effect type of thing. And if you can't see that cause and effect happening, maybe you're going to be doing a disservice to your children. Maybe you should get coaching, right? Maybe you should figure out what your child needs, because just allowing the schools to do it is not good enough anymore. So when we get into education and the mindset, there's going to be talking a lot about education, mindset, about school, adapting to environment. And we need to understand that education is a part of growing up. No teacher is perfect. No parent or adult is perfect. But at the same time, we can be adults and make sure that we're giving the kids proper information, where we're not going to program them in a way that we want them to be, but rather in a way that's going to be most beneficial for them. Now, just think about it. Do you think them being a drag queen is beneficial for them in the future? Yes or no? Right? I'm not going to give you the answer. But if you kind of can understand the severity of that question, you'll understand the truth. I'm not going to give you the answer again. You'll understand the truth. If I don't teach my kids about finances, they take out $120,000 in student loans and they beg the government to forgive my mistake. Oh, I didn't know I was taking out $120,000. They didn't learn about money. They didn't learn about finances. It's education. That's mindset. That's parenting. All of those things encompass everything. Just how we grow up. All of that is going to be talked about in this blog. What I do here on Mondays is I talk about the recent blog, which is Education in the Mindset, but I don't necessarily read it to bore you. This is for your reading pleasure, for you to understand education and mindset is a serious matter and it's something that you need to read and something you need to understand. So when we're looking at education in the mindset, it's more than just reading a book, getting taught by a teacher, getting a mindset coach, having parents being in line with the right programming or what they want to teach their kids. Because when it comes to parenting, there's so many different forms. There's so many different routes you can take, which is the right way. Now, I can't even tell you which is the right way. I'm a new father. And so me going in thinking I'm a mindset coach, I should be able to teach them exactly how I want to teach them. But in order for me to do that, I need to be able to look at my past. What type of challenges did I have at that age? What was I thinking at that age? And then I have to replicate that. So when they finally get to where I am, I can teach them. Because if I just go ahead and spout all this mindset, all this positivity, there's a 50-50 chance that they're going to listen or they're going to rebel and go off and do their own thing. Now, of course, there's going to be an age margin where I can easily get them. So around probably 5, 6, 7, I can easily get them to be mindset, totally driven, but then they can either fall into the pit of society, what society says, and then they kind of fall victim to that, or they finally hit their hormones and they kind of do their own thing. So there's many challenges that parents have to face and address later on in life. But what we have to do is give them the tools and then softly guide them. We corral them to think uniquely in their own way. How they think is not wrong. It's just how they think. And many times opinions are being shot down because they might be different. So if I had a different opinion than my kid, for example, I would say they're wrong. Your opinion is wrong. It doesn't matter, etc., etc. When in reality, that's their opinion. It's not mine to change. Because the moment I try to change them, they're going to resent me. And that's the last thing we need for our children to do, is to resent the people who are trying to help them be better. My only advice to parents is to be aware of what type of adults are in your child's life. Understand the teacher, right? Check out their Facebook, their Twitter, things like that, the work they do. Now, some teachers might be total radical left or total radical right, but yet in the classroom, they're totally neutral. That's how it should be. Teach the curriculum, go home. If you want to say something on Facebook, say something on Facebook. If you want to be an Instagram model, be an Instagram model. What happens in the school, what happens at home is different. Now, of course, there's going to be some stigma on it in society. But if your kid doesn't see it, that doesn't matter. What you see and what your kid sees can be totally different. So help them understand what they should be looking for in a person rather than what they should be staying away from in a person. Because if we look at mindset, positive is going to lead to something. Negative is not going to lead to much. So I encourage everyone to check out this blog, Education and Mindset. And of course, share this video, this audio. And if you have any questions, you can email me. Or if you're looking for coaching, you can head over to the website, revenconcepts.com. But I will see everyone on the next episode of Coaching a Session. And everyone, take care until then.